Join me, Dr. Panico, with Cindy Lauper and Chef Michelle Bernstein to talk about plaque psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, the potential connection and risk of developing permanent joint damage.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis 300 milligram dose and adults with active psoriatic arthritis 150 milligram dose. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for TB. Serious allergic reactions, severe skin reactions that look like eczema, and an increased risk of infections, some fatal, have occurred. It may lower your ability to fight infections, so tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if IBD symptoms develop or worsen. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com/Cindy.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
I won't let my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis symptoms define me.
Emerge as you. In 2 clinical studies, Tremfya guselkumab, taken by injection, provided 90% clearer skin at 16 weeks in 7 out of 10 adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. In a study, nearly 7 out of 10 patients with 90% clearer skin at 16 weeks were still clearer at 5 years. At 1 year and thereafter, patients and healthcare providers knew that Tremfya was being used. This may have increased results. Results may vary.
Serious allergic reactions may occur. Tremfya may increase your risk of infections and lower your ability to fight them. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms of infection, including fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough. Tell your doctor if you had a vaccine or plan to.
Emerge as you. Learn more about Tremfya, including important safety information at tremfya.com or call 1-877-578-3527. See our ad in Food and Wine magazine. For patients prescribed Tremfya, cost support may be available.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And we're back for our second recap of a minor league team this week. This time we're going to be looking at the Aberdeen Ironbirds, who finished over 500 and were in the playoff race until the final week of the season and had several big-name prospects, both on the pitching and hitting sides. And we'll talk about that in tonight's episode. But first, Orioles on the Verge is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. The Ironbirds this season went 67-65 and made a push for a playoff spot in the second half of the year until being eliminated in the final week of the season. Their 33-33 second half followed a pretty strong first half in which they finished 34-32. And one of the big themes of the podcast this year has been that this is the year of the pitcher. We're really seeing the Orioles' pitching depth improve in ways that it has not in the minor leagues in a long time. And a lot of guys who seemingly are more under-the-radar type prospects are having big years. And Aberdeen is the perfect case study for that, because you could look at both their bullpen and their starting rotation, which had names like Luis De Leon, Michael Ferret, Zach Fruit, and others, Trey Gibson, Nestor Herman, who put together really solid 2024 seasons. And we'll be talking about them tonight. But, of course, the Ironbirds also had some really interesting bats. Enrique Bradfield Jr. put together a nice run for them. Creed Willems in his second go-around at High A was much better than he had been the first time around. That ultimately earned him a promotion to Double A. And even Reed Trimble, who had kind of started to slip off the radar a little bit because of years of injuries, had a healthy and productive stretch at Aberdeen before being promoted to Bowie and unfortunately landing on the IL again. But his time with the Ironbirds was very good. So we've got a lot we can talk about here, not to mention that the Zach Eflin trade really took shape in Aberdeen thanks to Matt Horvath, Jackson Baumeister, and Matthew Etzel, and what those three players did during their time with the Ironbirds. So there's a lot that we could talk about with Aberdeen, but I want to start with the pitching staff. Bob, there's a lot of pitchers that stood out, and we'll be talking about them tonight individually. But when you look at this Ironbirds team, they ended up with pretty strong numbers. What were your thoughts on their pitchers?
Nothing but great things to say about the pitching. I mean, even Cameron Weston, who we'll talk about him more next week and is in line, probably at least a contender for minor league pitcher of the year for the Orioles. He started in high A before quickly moving up. Juan Nunez, rest in peace. I'm assuming it's Tommy John at the surgery. I'm assuming it's Tommy John at this point in time just because you haven't heard anything. He had a great year before going down. But yeah, like guys like Michael Ferret, Trey Gibson, Zach Fruit, Nestor Herman, even Levi Wells, flash stuff. Preston Johnson got better as the year went on. Edgar Portes became a legit like top 20, top 15 type pitching prospect in the system. Luis De Leon, I'm sure we'll get into him with his struggles, at least on the surface. But yeah, I mean, even in the bullpen, guys like Yaki Rivera, who I talked about in the last episode, Cooper Chandler, Zane Barnhart, like just pitchers just shuffling in and out, having success. And as we have said at some point in time, multiple times this season, Aberdeen actually played as a little bit more of a hitter's park than expected. But I guess that just means the pitching was all the better. But yeah, I mean, pitching was the highlight. If you're going to Aberdeen Ironbirds game in 2024, it was mostly to see the pitching because the hitting was some highlights, but the pitching was where it was at.
Yeah, it's like Matt Horvath struggled for much of his time here, and then he started getting hot and then got moved. Enrique Bradfield Jr. really got hot his last few weeks there with Aberdeen. Then he gets promoted. Creed Willems just mashed all year. But yeah, it's definitely the pitching was the highlight for me. You've got Bob mentioned some of the names there. I think that went under the radar this year, like Zane Barnhart. Actually, I didn't realize how well he pitched this year. I don't think we mentioned his name once this year on the podcast. I don't think we tweeted about him one time this year either, but he was a 17th round draft pick last year out of Hillsdale. I'm assuming that's a real place. I don't know where. I don't know what level, but it's college, I guess. But he's a local kid. We do know that. Local kid born in Maryland. I think he was born in Towson. Very quietly, 43 innings, a 2.47 ERA for Aberdeen, 44 strikeouts. Like walks were high, but I mean, yeah, you don't see many 17th round draft picks have that kind of success in their first year as a pro. Bob ended the last episode talking about Yaki Rivera. Like that's young kid. He was the MVP, a 1.99 ERA, 59 strikeouts in 37 innings. Aberdeen's bullpen was fantastic. I know lots of comments all year about how bad Norfolk's bullpen was, which had plenty of bright spots. Don't let those games fool you. Aberdeen's bullpen was really solid all year long, and they really didn't have to work that hard because this rotation in Aberdeen was pretty unbelievable all year. And yeah, we can, dive into some of the names. I don't know where you guys want to start. Maybe start with a guy with the lowest ERA. Actually, he was among qualified pitchers. He had the lowest ERA in the South Atlantic League in Zach Fruit. He was a senior sign, a 9th round pick out of Troy, signed for $40,000. So $130K below slot value. He's supposed to just, all right, you're intriguing, but you're a money saver for the other guys. He ends up leading the South Atlantic League with a 3.03 ERA among qualified pitchers, 113 strikeouts and 107 innings, all at the high level. So over 100 innings, like that's pretty awesome. I love the interview he did at the beginning of the year too, where it was like, I hated my changeup. I want to ditch it. So they put it under the Edgertronic camera, tweaked it, and he said it immediately became his favorite pitch. Like, I think that speaks volumes about him. I think it speaks volumes about, it's a prime example. It speaks volumes about the pitching development in this organization. He became a workhorse starter for the Ironbirds. I don't know. I do have, it's not a hot take at all, but as much as success he found as a starter this year, I really like Zach Fruit kind of projecting ahead a little bit. He may be, a workhorse in Bowie's rotation next year, but I think Zach Fruit in a year and a half, 2 years or so could potentially be a really fun, like high power, late inning bullpen arm in the majors. He was throwing 100 miles per hour in college. The stuff is better. The stuff alone is getting Mason Miller comps coming into the draft. I think Zach Fruit was probably, I know he's got a lot of like cult following among Orioles fans, but I think Zach Fruit was one of the arms that took the biggest steps forward this year.
Yeah, completely agree, especially if they want to go that route. Just let him loose in a bullpen. That would be so much fun. Could still see improvements next year going into lowering the walk rate, trying to get more strikeouts, just like with any pitcher. 25.1% strikeout rate, 12.2% walk rate, both of which are not terrible numbers, but they could be improved. FIP was a little bit worse than the ERA, but even like he just got soft contact. Like people did not square him up very much. A 199 batting average against. And yeah, like you just said, a workhorse. I was kind of hoping he would get a bump up to Bowie at one point or another, but like we talked about with the Delmarva pitchers, at a certain point you might as well just stay where you are and keep things comfortable. But obviously we'll be in Bowie's rotation to start next season, and I'm really looking forward to see what types of improvements he makes from here to then.
Yeah, I thought he was excellent this year, and honestly, I didn't have a complete sense of how the Orioles were going to use him as the season started. And a lot of pitchers early on are in that piggyback role. And it's like, all right, what path are they going to take with Fruit? Is he going to be a starter? Is he going to be a reliever? Because in his college career, the only year where he started every game was 2022 at Eastern Michigan. Otherwise, he was either primarily a reliever or in a hybrid role. So he comes in the Orioles organization, 25 games, 21 starts in his first full year of pro ball. And you guys mentioned he really emerged as a workhorse for the Ironbirds. And I think that was a great thing for him. And really what I want to see next year when he gets to AA is how does the stuff hold up multiple times through the order against more advanced hitters, because that's probably going to tell us a lot about whether or not he sticks in a rotation or lands in the bullpen. But I fully agree with Nick. If it doesn't work out in the rotation for Fruit, you've got a guy that has high leverage reliever stuff.
I like it. And you guys mentioned Luis De Leon and some of his struggles. Not the opposite end of the spectrum there, because this is still an elite pitching prospect, in my opinion. But the numbers, yeah, definitely weren't what I think we expected when he got to high A. But you won't find many left-handed pitchers who throw 96, 97 with the true unicorn changeup, multiple secondary offerings. I think he's 9th on our latest top 50 update, and we're bullish on him. Baseball America put him 8th on their latest top 30 update. So, and even described him as a mid-rotation starter potential there. So, that's speaks volumes about De Leon, despite the numbers. Doesn't turn 22 until April. So, 2 years younger than the average high A player. The walks were up when he got promoted, but I don't know. He still had a ground ball rate of 60%, which is absurd. I just think this is a guy who the Orioles are going to bring about a little bit slower, because he had 28 innings his first year in pro ball, 53 innings last year, and then he had 87 this year. And clearly, once he eclipsed the 53 innings, he started wearing down a little bit. So I think he's young. They got to work to really build up his innings and fight through that. Which he still had a couple of really good outings at the end of the year, despite probably being exhausted and just running on fumes there with that arm. But yeah, I think you talk about stuff and potential. Luis De Leon is certainly one of the more intriguing and top pitching prospects in this entire organization, despite what the numbers said this year.
Yeah, not very concerned at all. Just felt bad from a confidence standpoint that the numbers were as bad as they were. 5.73 ERA, but his FIP is 4.46, xFIP 4.34. Batters hit, or not batters hit, his BABIP against was 379, which is just ridiculously high. So got to think that's going to get better, especially fresh and taking from this experience improvement over the offseason. Underreported how much of a ground ball pitcher this guy is, despite just having electric high heat out from the left side. This season was in high A was actually the first time he's had a ground ball percentage under 60% at 59.1. Last year in low A, over 26.1 innings, he had a 73.4% ground ball rate. Just ridiculous. Still super high on this kid, and can't wait to see him earn a promotion to AA Bowie midseason 2025.
Anecdotally, I did a lot of dailies in the second half when De Leon would appear in a game for Aberdeen, and it seemed like it was the same story a lot of times where he would come in and out of the bullpen, and he would either be bad on the front end and then settle down and put together a couple of decent innings after that, or he would come out of the gate really strong, put together back-to-back really good innings, and then unravel in the third. And that was a sign to me that he was really wearing down. And Nick, you just brought up the numbers. I mean, he far and away eclipsed his career high in innings pitched this season. And honestly, and this is a credit to him, I expected him to get shut down before the season ended. I wouldn't have been shocked if in mid-August the Orioles decided De Leon was finished for the year and put him on the development list. But he went out there. He continued to pitch. He had a couple of decent outings at the end of the season. The one thing I would be interested to see, though, next year, I'm kind of hoping that he's primarily a starter right away in Aberdeen, because that's one thing that I notice is that he was only a starter at Delmarva. He had some short outings, but he was only a starter at Delmarva. Then he went to Aberdeen and started to pitch in the piggybacking role, and some of his worst outings this season with Aberdeen were out of the bullpen. So I just wonder if he's one of those guys that has a hard time making an adjustment to that routine of having to come in to the middle of the game. And just keep in mind, he's very, very raw at this point. He's only going to be 22 next season in high A, which is pretty good. And his stuff, there just are not a lot of pitchers in the minor leagues, frankly, who have the stuff that he has from the left side, which is why I have said before, and I still believe that if he puts everything together, he's going to be a top 100 prospect at some point.
I think it's interesting.
At your job, do you ever have to deal with a nose roller? How about a snub pulley? Well, if you're installing a new conveyor belt system, dealing with the different components can sound like you're speaking a foreign language. Luckily, you've got a team ready to help. Grainger's technical product specialists are fluent in maintenance, repair, and operations. So whenever you want to talk shop, just reach out. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Join me, Dr. Panico, with Cindy Lauper and Chef Michelle Bernstein to talk about plaque psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, the potential connection and risk of developing permanent joint damage.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis 300 milligram dose and adults with active psoriatic arthritis 150 milligram dose. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for TB. Serious allergic reactions, severe skin reactions that look like eczema, and an increased risk of infections, some fatal, have occurred. It may lower your ability to fight infections, so tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if IBD symptoms develop or worsen. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com/Cindy.
So much of what we want to do can seem impossible, but the highest achievers among us are the people still striving, still reaching for something. It's those people who approach the impossible and embrace it. There's a vehicle for people like that. It's called the Defender. The Defender is an icon, reimagined for a new generation of explorers and fully equipped for 21st century adventures. 3D surround cameras with ClearSight ground view let you see underneath the vehicle and anticipate obstacles in rough terrain. And ClearSight rear view offers an unobstructed rear view even when you can't see through the back window. Driver aid technologies make driving and parking simpler, while intuitive driver displays are customizable to your journey. Plus, the next-generation Pivi Pro infotainment system helps make more of your world. There's a family of vehicles for Defender, too. Meet the Defender 90, Defender 110, and the 8-seat Defender 130. Are you ready to embrace the impossible? Explore the Defender at LandRoverUSA.com.
Piggyback roll. I don't know if you have the numbers, like the specific numbers there between what he did when he came in relief versus when he was a starter, because I remember in the offseason in doing our countdown, And I looked at Cameron Weston. Cameron Weston, when he was in that piggyback role in Aberdeen, the numbers were way better for him when he got the start versus when he came in relief. And then look what he did in Bowie this year as a starter. So I almost wonder if Luis De Leon could follow that same trend. But that'd be interesting.
Here's the breakdown. 64, and this is between Delmarva and Aberdeen that he had these numbers. 18 starts for 64 in the third innings, 77 strikeouts against 29 walks, 4.2 ERA. 8 games out of the bullpen for 23 in the third innings, 29 strikeouts to 20 walks with a 5.79 ERA. So if you go by strikeout per 9, which isn't the best number, but it's the one right in front of me, his strikeout per 9 was up out of the bullpen compared to the rotation, but the walk rate clearly not good in the ERA, more than a run and a half higher.
Maybe there's something there.
Before we move on to hitters, I think we could agree that if De Leon follows the development path of Edgar Portes, we will be very happy, because Portes last year overcame a little bit of a slow start, I believe, at Delmarva. Finished strong there before the promotion to Aberdeen, went back there this year and put together an excellent season. 94 in the third innings pitched, 119 strikeouts against 49 walks. He also had a 3.34 ERA. At one point, it was him and Moises Chase in the conversation of who is the biggest breakout at Aberdeen. Chase obviously traded to the Phillies at the deadline in the Gregory Soto deal, but the Orioles still have Portes in their system. I love his fastball. I just think it has such good movement, such a good profile, good late movement up in the zone. But the rest of his pitch mix is really coming together.
Yeah, I love Portes. And like you said, it starts with that fastball. I listen to a lot of Rates and Barrels, and Eno Sarris says most important pitch is have a great fastball with the good stuff plus, and you can build from there. That's Edgar Portes to a T, in my opinion. He's kind of the opposite of Luis De Leon when it comes to ground ball percentage. He had an 18.2% ground ball rate in high A last year. Granted, it was 3.2 innings, but in the 30% range for most of his career. And he's also just 21 years old. I mean, I think he'll turn 22 before Luis De Leon does, but still super young guy who, as we are talking about with Luis De Leon, there's proof that a guy like this can make those improvements, which we already know, but it's nice to see it in action with Portes. And I think he's I know he's Rule 5 eligible. They probably won't put him on just because I don't think there's any chance that a team's going to take him. But he's, from a talent perspective, he's worth adding to the 40-man roster because he'll start next year in AA Bowie at 22 years old. And if he can build on this season, then again, as these pitchers continue to creep up the system, I don't think the Orioles farm system is going to fall off as much as some people think it will because of guys like Portes who are just continuing to develop and show great stuff as they move up the system.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up with Portes because the numbers are fantastic. He honestly has one of my favorite deliveries in the system. It's so smooth. He worked out with Pedro Martinez in the offseason, and you could tell from the delivery. The only thing with Portes is what Bob mentioned there is why I'm hesitant to get super attached to Portes is because he is Rule 5 eligible this offseason. And yeah, he very likely does start in Bowie's rotation or as part of some piggyback option, depending on how many arms are up there in Bowie. But he's Rule 5 eligible this winter. He's not getting added to the 40-man roster. I think there's a 0% chance he gets picked. You don't have to worry about that. But it's next year. It's next winter when, if he starts off really good in Bowie and takes off, sure, you add him to the 40-man. You don't even really think about it that hard. He's a 40-man candidate. But if he's kind of fringy, he gets off to a slow start, or it's just he's making gains, but can you use a 40-man spot on this guy who's going to need a lot of time next year or the year after that in AAA? I think he could potentially be a guy that you use to sweeten the deal, either this offseason or at next year's trade deadline. We saw the Rule 5 purge at this deadline. I think Portes, if he continues to pitch like he did this year, could end up being one of those Rule 5 casualties again, but that's a good thing. The Orioles traded a lot of good pitching prospects for major leaguers, and Portes could be the next in line there. Or he starts next year in Boo's rotation, takes off. He's in Norfolk by the All-Star break, and we're having a Brandon Young type conversation about Edgar Portes. But interested to see where that journey kind of shakes out next year.
We could spend an entire episode breaking down Aberdeen's pitching staff, and I do want to get to the hitter, so we will wrap up, but I think we'd be remiss to not talk about a couple more arms in Michael Ferret and Nestor Herman. We kind of teased this a little bit on our episode earlier this week about the Shorebirds. Both of these guys had meteoric rises this season, which was their first full year in pro ball, although they kind of took different paths to get there. Ferret, unheralded pitcher out of a JUCO school, went to Delmarva, was dominant there, and went to the Aberdeen. And while there were some rough patches along the way, he made the adjustments I think you wanted to see him make as the season went on. And I feel pretty good about him going into 2025. And then with Herman, early season injury, but then was flat out dominant when he came back from off the IL with the Shorebirds, was promoted to Aberdeen on August 1st, and then went on to pitch 25 and a third innings, striking out 33 batters and only walking 3, which is just a really, really good stat. Just before we get into the hitters, just your thoughts on these two guys.
The gifts just keep on giving. Michael Ferret, I keep forgetting how young he is. We were talking about Edgar Portes and Luis De Leon, 21 years old in high A, and how young they are. Michael Ferret is 20 years old right now, and he'll be 20 years old when next season starts. I think his birthday is in April or May. But it's just ridiculous. He absolutely dominated low A, and he goes up to high A. Yeah, he struggled a little bit, 4.35 ERA, similar FIP, up or down a little bit. But he kept the strikeout rate pretty much right in line. 29.9%, went down to 28.1% going up to Aberdeen. And the walk rate only went up from 9.1% to 10.9%. So you can see that he continued to just pitch his game and just filthy stuff. And you can see why, as he continues to mature and grow and develop, how he could be a mid to potentially upper rotation starter. Yeah, just so much to like there. I want to mention Trey Gibson as well real quick, the undrafted free agent. We talked about him a lot. He's 22, so still fairly young for the level, and he just heavy pitches, great ground ball rate. FIP was better than his ERA in low A and high A. Just shout out to him. Very curious to see how he does next year. And yeah, Nestor Herman, I mean, what else is there to say? You have a 1.49 ERA in almost 50 innings with Delmarva. The FIP is 2.09, so not a fluke. A 30% strikeout rate, 7.4% walk rate. Amazing numbers. Goes up to high A and does even better in 25.1 innings with a 1.78 ERA, 2.33 FIP, 34% strikeout rate, and a 3.1% walk rate. That's like Zebby Matthews for the Twins-esque. Just, I think, I don't even know if we know what we have on our hands with Nestor Herman still, but looking pretty ridiculous at this point.
We don't. There will be the mailbag question. Who is this Herman kid in about 2 weeks? Yeah, Herman and Gibson summed up pretty well there. The 33 strikeouts to 3 walks in high A alone for Nestor Herman. Small school kid, unknown kid, missed a big chunk of the year. I don't think it's crazy to say that Nestor Herman and Trey Gibson, I don't think it's out of the question to say they start next year in Bowie, to be honest. I don't know, maybe I'm just being super optimistic about these two, but they're older guys. They're college guys. I could see it. If not, they're going to have the opportunity to potentially end next year in AAA if they pitch like they did this year. You start facing much better competition in AA, obviously. So it's like, pump the brakes a little bit on these guys, but they're just, like Zach said, we could do 3 hours on just the arms that came through Aberdeen alone. There's a really good foundation here, and there's this massive pool of arms of next year. We get to see a lot of these guys are going to start back in Aberdeen, but a lot of them are going to start in Bowie. There's just this massive pool of pitchers that we get to watch at the beginning of next year and say, all right, who's going to break out? Who are finally going to be the guys where national media starts, respecting these guys or giving them attention and asking who is that? And even Orioles fans who follow the minor leagues a little bit start to maybe shout out some more respect to these arms that the Orioles are developing. Herman and Gibson are both there. Ferret, like, that kid, 99 innings this year, and he was some scrawny JUCO kid that they got out of Florida last year. Revamped the pitch mix, increased the velo. You see all the videos come out from Tread where he trained in the offseason. I'm like, all right, I don't know who this kid is. I know he drafted him, but this like super skinny kid, I think I've made the joke before. Like, he made Blaine Knight look like he had some meat on his bones. I don't know. He's now adding like 4 miles per hour to his fastball in the offseason and throwing all different type of pitch mix. Like, is he going to blow his arm out this year? And like, I don't know. Nope. Like, from the first start, I said he looked different on the mound, just poised, way more advanced on the mound than his peers in Delmarva, and that didn't change at all. I think those 3 guys are extremely exciting. And I want to throw out one more name because we can't stop with the arms. Jared Beck, I don't know. He ended in Aberdeen, the 7-foot lefty, obviously. He started the year in his 3rd stint with Delmarva. That first month or so was disastrous, and I was completely out. I get that he's 7 feet tall. He was a D2 arm. No rush with this kid. Like, keep working with him. If it takes 5 years, if it takes 6 years to sync everything up, then it takes 5 or 6 years. Doesn't matter. Whenever it clicks, it clicks. But I just felt like it was so bad in year 3 that, is there any future? Is he done? But then July and August, he combined for 18 innings, 3 earned runs, 28 strikeouts to 13 walks. 13 walks in 2 months is still not great, but he walked 10 or more each month the previous 2 months. So I don't know. He got the bump to high A to end the year. I think things are starting to move in the right direction for Beck, and I'm never going to be mad when these guys who I'm out on kind of prove me wrong.
Yeah, Beck really did a nice job overcoming what was a bad start to the year down at Delmarva. So hopefully that's a springboard for success in 2025. We'll shift to the offense now. And if you just look at the stats for the team as a whole, one thing that becomes apparent is that the Ironbirds ran a lot this year. In fact, they led the South Atlantic League with 363 steals. The next closest team, which was Bowling Green, the Rays affiliate, stole 262 bags. So they outpaced the closest team by 101 steals. The reason I bring that up is that the leader in the clubhouse for that was Enrique Bradfield Jr., 59 steals and 68 attempts during his time with the Ironbirds. And offensively, I think he ended up checking off every box that you would want to see in his development, even if it didn't really occur in the cleanest fashion. He got off to a slow start this year before hitting the IL with a concussion, but then came back and was one of the steadier hitters in Aberdeen's lineup after that. He worked that into a promotion to Double-A Bowie, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about what he's done with the Bay Sox next week. But he's hit pretty well there, and his time at Aberdeen, he's made a lot of adjustments. Bob, I'll start with you. How are you feeling about Bradfield as we wind down his first full season, most of which occurred at Aberdeen?
You know, I feel pretty good about it. I don't think he's the eye-popping offensive prospect that we have seen from the Orioles in the past, but we've talked about it a bunch. Just the speed and defense alone, such a high floor, high ceiling as well. If he can get that hit tool going, he has a great eye. He gets on base. He'll take his walks. He'll steal his bases, no doubt about it. Can he bat 250 to 270 in the major leagues and have like a mid-ish 300 on-base percentage and maybe hit some gaps, hit some doubles and triples, pop a home run over the scoreboard in right field at Camden Yards a few times? Remains to be seen. But I think we're headed in the right direction, and the fact that he got better as the season went on and his swing has looked better, just from a physical watching him play standpoint, you can tell that there's been progress made there. That is encouraging, and just got to see if we can keep it up as he rises up the rank.
Yeah, and with Aberdeen, the stolen base stuff, it was actually a minor league baseball record. Like, the Aberdeen Ironbirds this year stole more bases than any other team in the history of minor league baseball. It wasn't a Roberto Mercado thing, although he still does that in Bowie. Like, this is an Aberdeen thing. They just unleash these guys. But yeah, Bradfield, I feel very relieved I'll say. I think that's a good word to describe how I feel with Bradfield now, because there were major question marks entering the year. He came out of the gate slow. I know pretty much everyone except Matthew Etzel does that in this organization, but he ended the year strong. You look at his Bowie numbers. I know we're talking about Aberdeen, but you look at his Bowie numbers right now. He's played in 21 games. He's got a 118 WRC plus. His strikeouts are way down. The walk rate is up. A smaller sample size, obviously, but he's hitting 272 with Bowie. Like, I feel relieved a little bit here with Bradfield, and I think things are trending in the right direction with him. And I found the tweet real quick. Shout out to Dan Sanchez at Orioles Review on Twitter. I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you follow him already. But I really liked a tweet he had a couple of days ago. While Bradfield, I think he summarizes up Bradfield pretty perfectly here, at least my thoughts about Bradfield. While Bradfield has not done anything to tick up his 35 grade power this year, his success over 86 plate appearances in AA is reducing some of the uncertainty over whether his contact-oriented approach will translate to the upper levels. Agree with that. As I've tested out in other posts, a 650 OPS with his profile is probably enough to be a solid regular. A 700 OPS likely makes him a 3+ WAR player in the major leagues. Like, that's, yeah. I mean, we talk a lot of, a year or so ago about Joey Ortiz. If he could just be a league average bat, that's a potential all-star major leaguer. I think that's even more so the case with Bradfield. Just barely a league average bat. With his speed, with his defense, and the chaos that he can cause on the base paths, Bradfield could be quite the major leaguer. And I feel better about him reaching that point after watching him this year.
Well, we've seen it with Cedric Mullins in Baltimore the past couple of years. Obviously, hasn't been the same guy as his 30-30 season a few years ago, but even this year with such a slow start, or at least a terrible month of May, he's got his OPS just back over 700, and I think his WAR is like 2.3, 2.4 right now already. Saw him make an incredible play this week in Boston, just outstanding diving catch. Like, you might get frustrated because the offensive numbers aren't what you want, but anything you can get offensively from a guy with that good a defense and that much speed, it's just a bonus.
Another guy that got to jump from Aberdeen.
Join me, Dr. Panico, with Cindy Lauper and Chef Michelle Bernstein to talk about plaque psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, the potential connection and risk of developing permanent joint damage.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis 300 milligram dose and adults with active psoriatic arthritis 150 milligram dose. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for TB, serious allergic reactions, severe skin reactions that look like eczema, and an increased risk of infections, some fatal, have occurred. It may lower your ability to fight infections, so tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if IBD symptoms develop or worsen. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com/Cindy.
So much of what we want to do can seem impossible, but the highest achievers among us are the people still striving, still reaching for something. It's those people who approach the impossible and embrace it. There's a vehicle for people like that. It's called the Defender. The Defender is an icon, reimagined for a new generation of explorers and fully equipped for 21st century adventures. 3D surround cameras with ClearSight ground view let you see underneath the vehicle and anticipate obstacles in rough terrain. And ClearSight rear view offers an unobstructed rear view even when you can't see through the back window. Driver aid technologies make driving and parking simpler, while intuitive driver displays are customizable to your journey. Plus, the next-generation Pivi Pro infotainment system helps make more of your world. There's a family of vehicles for Defender, too. Meet the Defender 90, Defender 110, and the 8-seat Defender 130. Are you ready to embrace the impossible? Explore the Defender at LandRoverUSA.com.
I won't let my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis symptoms define me.
Emerge as you. In 2 clinical studies, Tremfya guselkumab, taken by injection, provided 90% clearer skin at 16 weeks in 7 out of 10 adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. In a study, nearly 7 out of 10 patients with 90% clearer skin at 16 weeks were still clearer at 5 years. At 1 year and thereafter, patients and healthcare providers knew that Tremfya was being used. This may have increased results. Results may vary.
Serious allergic reactions may occur. Tremfya may increase your risk of infections and lower your ability to fight them. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms of infection, including fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough. Tell your doctor if you had a vaccine or plan to.
Emerge as you. Learn more about Tremfya, including important safety information at tremfya.com or call 1-877-578-3527. See our ad in Food and Wine magazine. For patients prescribed Tremfya, cost support may be available.
The Bowie this year is Creed Willems. And in Willems, we're talking about a player with a much, much different profile than Bradfield. Willems, a catcher who has some serious power from the left side of the plate. And this continued a trend we've seen with Willems in his career so far, which is that he'll struggle to level, go back to that level the following year, and completely correct everything that was causing his struggles during his first stint. He did that in Delmarva last year, then was promoted to Aberdeen, and frankly just didn't hit very well for the Ironbirds during his 75-game run in 2023. However, much better for Aberdeen this year. 82 games, posted a 788 OPS, and his 13 home runs and 51 RBIs were team-leading totals for the Ironbirds. And although it's been a little bit up and down so far at a small sample size for Willems at Bowie, he's showing plenty of power there. I think that we're kind of all on the same page at this point about Willems, which is that the defense is solid. And if the hit tool can just continue to get a little bit better at each level, the Orioles have something here because you have left-handed power and a catcher and a guy that actually plays pretty solid first base when he's over there. But what specific adjustments do you think he made at Aberdeen that allowed him to be successful? And I'll start with Nickel in that one.
The thing that sticks out to me the most with Creed is the walk and strikeouts. Like when he was at multiple levels in 2023. So we'll use when he was at high A in 2023, he had a almost 28% strikeout rate. That number dipped to 20.9% this year in high A. That is significant. The walk rate also went from 8.4% up to 10.7%. That's huge. He was a 123 WRC plus hitter in high A this year. We know the power is there. It really came out in game power this year, which was good to see, but the power's fun. But I love the walk and strikeout adjustment he made this year. That was phenomenal. And even it's only a 47 plate appearance size sample in AA so far, but he's only striking out 17% of the time in AA, and he already has 3 home runs. So yeah, he's only a 4% walk rate, only hitting 159, but the strikeouts. Like if Creed Willems isn't going to strike out, like he's going to be a pretty awesome bat for you. And that bat, if he sticks in Baltimore and there's some role, we don't need to worry about what the future role is. Basayo and Adler, who cares right now? He's what, 20? Is he 21 yet? Let's see. Yes, he just turned 21. He just turned 21 years old, just got promoted to AA. Let him rake over the next year or two in the minors. I think you got I was very late in coming around on Creed. I will admit that, but I'm here now and all aboard.
You just said let him rake, and that just reminds me, let Billy cook in Pittsburgh. Come on. I love seeing him have some success up there in Pittsburgh. But yeah, Creed Willems, for me, I think we saw something at least that we haven't seen him do yet as a professional, which was we've seen him have a hot start. We've seen him have a cold stretch. We saw him bounce back and get some consistency this year, which I thought was big. Maybe from a mindset perspective, I'm not sure. But I just like to see that, and it gives me faith that, he might be batting 159 with like a 5.55 OPS right now in Bowie. Perfect. This is perfect because he's going to come back next year and have like a mid-900 OPS through mid-May, and he'll be right back on the radar again.
One more hitter I want to shout out at Aberdeen, and that's Tavian Josenberger. If you just look at batting average, you're going to look at his time in Aberdeen and think, well, what's impressive about a college hitter in high A who struggled to hit 230? Well, he walked 14% of the time, only struck out a little over 16% of the time, had a 117 WRC plus, and the offense was clearly ticking up when he was promoted to Bowie. Unfortunately, It didn't take long for him to land on the IL after he got to Bowie, which is why I wanted to make sure we included him in tonight's show. But what Josenberger does well, and it's an interesting skill set, can play multiple positions on the field, runs very, very well. I talked about Bradfield's stolen base total. Josenberger had 45 steals and 51 attempts with the Ironbirds and 50 and 56 overall this season. I just think that if the hit tool comes around at Bowie, which is very possible because he would not be the first prospect to have an underwhelming batting average at high A and then reverse that trend when he got to double A, we're going to be talking about him a lot more next season.
Yeah. And what gives me hope that that hit tool will emerge is 16% strikeout rate in Aberdeen this year, a 14% walk rate. I think Enrique Bradfield Jr. was the only hitter who had a lower swinging strike rate than Tavian Josenberger. So, like, this kid makes contact. He had a 257 BABIP in high A as well. So it got better in a small sample in double A. He was hitting well. He was hitting 300 in his 7 games. So I love Josenberger. The power from the left side, I think it's very real. I think the organization, I'm pretty sure I talked about this maybe in our top 50 update, but I know I talked about this recently. But I feel like the organization at the beginning of the year wanted to work Josenberger more at second base. And with Bradfield's injury and then promotions and then trades, it forced him into the outfield again. But clearly this organization, I think, believes that he could be pretty valuable as like a second base center field type prospect. I think his last year at Arkansas, he didn't commit a single error in center field. And I know errors is a subjective stat sometimes, but still, like, I think this is a bit of a sleeper prospect here in the organization. I don't think he's ever going to get as much as respect as he should because, he's not going to hit 20 plus home runs. But yeah, you talk about Bradfield and the stolen bases, all that emphasis there. He's up to 50 combined stolen bases this year. Like, that's a feat into itself right there. I think Josenberger is going to be a lot of fun to watch in that Bowie lineup next year. And I'm interested to see if it's more center field, more second base, but regardless, that bat could be pretty intriguing.
You got to use your feet to accomplish that feat, Tavian Josenberger. He's like the rich man's Luis Valdez. He's got the speed, plays second base, outfield, except he can actually hit a little bit. And I've seen him pop up on some analytically inclined Twitter pages that are like monitoring guys and who could pop up next year or at the end of the season if he didn't get hurt. And Josenberger has showed up on some of those lists. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what he can do once healthy, starting in Bowie in 2025.
So with the hitters, there was quite a bit of turnover in Aberdeen this year, and they had a lot of the college picks that the Orioles selected this year end the season there, including Vance Honeycutt, the top overall pick, along with Ethan Anderson, Austin O'Verne, Ryan Stafford, and Griff O'Farrell. We took a pretty deep dive into those players last week. All of them, kind of performed with mixed success in that 1 week stretch that they had at Aberdeen to end the year. I would expect that all of them are going to be on Aberdeen's opening day roster next year. You had Matthew Etzel and Mac Horvath, who had 2 completely different paths to success with the Ironbirds before they were traded as part of the Zach Eflin deal. Etzel was, frankly, Aberdeen's best all-around player over the first month and a half. He turned that into a promotion to Bowie. Horvath took 2 months for him to get going at the plate, but he really turned it on in the last 2 months leading up to the trade. And in fact, his 9 home runs were good for second on the Ironbirds. So both of those players stood out. They had a nice influx of prospects in the end, not just with the college hitters, but then players like Aaron Estrada, Leandro Arias, and Thomas Sosa, who we talked about at length last week, that made the jump from Delmarva to Aberdeen. But before we wrap up this episode, any other position players either one of you want to talk about from the Ironbirds?
I definitely want to shout out one guy. Well, first, I will say I'm holding out a little bit of hope with Jake Cunningham next year. I'm not going to fully give up on Cunningham yet. I don't know. It was such a bad time in Delmarva, but a pretty decent end to the year. it's going to be hard for me to give up on Cunningham completely, but hopefully he shows something next year. But I do want to shout out Jalen Vasquez, though. 20th round pick last year out of a D2 school. Started out really hot. Eventually, he did cool off. He only hit 216 this year in Aberdeen, but he had a 16% walk rate, a 101 WRC plus, stole 35 bases, 23 extra base hits, 4 triples, 4 home runs. He's a solid defender up the middle. I want to see him again next year, see if he can take a step forward. I just think a 20th round draft pick out of a D2 school who in his first full year of pro ball was a league average hitter in high A. I think that's kind of impressive. I think he did enough to warrant a hard look next year. But I was pretty impressed with Jalen Vasquez. Some nights he would flash a ton of tools and be arguably the most exciting player on that field in Aberdeen. And then he'd go cool for a couple weeks. But I think overall, when you look at his year, pretty solid year for Vasquez.
You have a couple guys, the reemergence of Reed Trimble, or the emergence just because of all the injuries. And of course, he's hurt right now as well. But he got up to AA Bowie after putting up an 829 OPS in high A and not that much playing time. He had 23 stolen bases, 13 doubles, 3 triples, 5 home runs, great walk rate. So glad to see Trimble back on the map, probably surpassed John Rhodes at this point, who we'll get into next week, I'm sure. And Douglas Hodo, for me, was a nice, pleasant surprise. We talked about him a bunch on the bonus segment throughout the year, but ended high A with a 775 OPS and 42 stolen bases for the Ironbirds, 12 doubles, 6 home runs, a triple. Also, he's now been promoted to AA Bowie, so 48 stolen bases on the season. He could get to 50 as well if he gets a couple this week with Bowie, but those are 2 other guys that I thought deserved a shout out.
Both good names to bring up there, and we'll have a lot more to talk about next week when we'll break down the Bowie Bay Sox season. We may also have some Major League coverage mixed in as well. Norfolk, by the way, will be the last minor league affiliate to end their season, which will be in a couple of weeks. Of course, between now and then and well into the offseason, we will have plenty of coverage for you here at Orioles on the Verge. And while you wait for us to return next week, you can catch us on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a paying member of our community. We have September's update to our top 50 list out. That's exclusive for patrons. You're going to want to catch that along with our bonus Discord channels that, again, are exclusive to paying members of our Patreon community. And we'll keep the offerings coming over the offseason. So don't feel like you've missed out if you're only signing up now. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Cyndi Lauper. My scalp was covered with psoriasis, which could lead to psoriatic arthritis, but Cosentyx treats both.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis 300 milligram dose and adults with active psoriatic arthritis 150 milligram dose. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for TB. Serious allergic reactions, severe skin reactions that look like eczema, and an increased risk of infections, some fatal, have occurred. Cosentyx may lower ability to fight infections, so tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if IBD symptoms develop or worsen. Learn more at Cosentyx.com or 1-844-COSENTYX.
Cosentyx works for me.
Ask your doctor about Cosentyx.
I won't let my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis symptoms define me.
Emerge as you. In 2 clinical studies, Tremfya guselkumab, taken by injection, provided 90% clearer skin at 16 weeks in 7 out of 10 adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. In a study, nearly 7 out of 10 patients with 90% clearer skin at 16 weeks were still clearer at 5 years. At 1 year and thereafter, patients and healthcare providers knew that Tremfya was being used. This may have increased results. Results may vary.
Serious allergic reactions may occur. Tremfya may increase your risk of infections and lower your ability to fight them. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms of infection, including fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough. Tell your doctor if you had a vaccine or plan to.
Emerge as you. Learn more about Tremfya, including important safety information at tremfya.com or call 1-877-578-3527. See our ad in Food and Wine magazine. For patients prescribed Tremfya, cost support may be available.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The $5 meal deal at McDonald's means you get to pick between a McDouble or a McChicken. Then get a small fry, a small drink, and a 4-piece McNuggets. That's a lot of McDonald's for not a lot of money. Get the $5 meal deal today.
Prices and participation may vary for a limited time only.
At Ashley, you'll find colorful furniture that brings your home to life. Ashley makes it easier than ever to express your personal style with an array of looks in fun trending hues to choose from earth tones to vibrant colors to calming blues and greens. Ashley has pieces for every room in the house in the season's most sought-after shades. A more colorful life starts at Ashley. Shop in store, online today. Ashley, for the love of home.